Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So inshallah, today, we're starting Ramadan, but I'm not going to talk about Ramadan specifically. I just want to talk a little bit, do a reflection on kind of isolation and caves. Talk about caves a little bit, and how the significance of caves Islamically, and kind of using some anecdotes from personal experience, and then also looking from the Quran and some stories as well from the Prophet ﷺ and whatnot. So all of us, when we hear of caves, certain things come to our mind, right? It could be that they're dark, it could be that they're scary, it could be that they're tight. Just various things come to our mind. If somebody were to say, like, imagine a cave, a lot of different things come to mind, right? What animals may be in there, just different things. And when I was doing nomad camps before with Ilyas, we did 2 caving trips. Both of them were guided. We weren't that experienced, but the lessons that were in them were like really strong and profound. One of the trips, we had like full suits on because they're really like dirty and kind of wet and moist. And then we had those kind of helmets that have the big light on the top. And then another one, it was similar. We didn't have the whole suit, but it was actually a lot more treacherous. Like, it was really tight, and we had to dive, and sometimes we had to climb 30 feet, and this is in a cave again. So we were going in for hours into the cave until we got to the end and stuff like that. And one of them had a river in it. So there's just a lot of different things that it was a really interesting experience, and some of it was actually kind of scary. But there were a few things that I want to just share in our reflection in that time in the cave, and then some connections, again, like religiously for us to kind of think about. And then now that we're in isolation, kind of think of us kind of caved in, or secluded now in our homes. What are some of the lessons that we can take from that as well? So, first is the idea of the darkness. So in one of the trips, after we had gone in for at least an hour, the guide told us to turn off our headlamps. And so we did that. And literally, that was the first time really being in a place where it was just complete darkness, to the point where, you have your hand directly in front of your face and you couldn't see anything, right? And thinking about, like, okay, if these lights, like, were to be damaged, we'd be a goner. Because literally, like, you take a wrong turn, you'll get lost. Or, there's some jagged edges. Again, one of them had a river that was pretty strong. Like, if you were to slip and fall into there, it could have been dangerous. So, the importance of light became so apparent. It's something that we just don't take, that we take for granted. We don't really think about the guidance that light gives us, right? The guidance that light gives us. And if you are not exposed to that light, how lost you truly can be. And for us, when we finished with the cave and started talking to the youth that we had out there with us, that was one of the driving forces that we really talked about, was this idea of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is a nur, right? He is the light. And that there's so many meanings behind that name, but in that specific case, in that specific purpose, the light of Allah's guidance. That if you are left without guidance, without that light, that truly you would be lost. You'd be in a perilous situation that not only is it dangerous, it'd be scary. I mean, you don't know which way to turn. You don't know who's around you is going to help you or not help you. What's going to benefit you, not benefit you. What's the right way, what's the wrong way. I mean, without having that light, like, truly, your life would be, you'd be in anxiety and chaos, right? In that situation. So if you take that out, and you extrapolate that lesson to our situation, you see the blessing of having God's light in our life, and how not having it causes the chaos and the lack of knowledge and understanding of the purpose of our life and which way we should go and what's the right path to take, and all those safeguards for us that gives us comfort and security. We wouldn't have that, and you see that with so much depression and anxiety and things that are out there, and a lot of it is just because people just don't know. They have no guidance. So just the idea of light and darkness. The second thing is, as we were going through one of the caves, there were bats in there. And how amazing the bat is, just the fact with its echolocation, all that kind of stuff, the scientifically is pretty cool. But the one thing that stood out was that the guy told us that these particular bats that were there, this was in Virginia, that these particular bats only once have to map out the cave, and then they don't have to do it again. They memorize it. So they have the map in their head. So they do their echolocation one time as they go through the path, and then that's it. And the only time the only reason they keep doing it is if anything changes inside of it. But basically they can map it out and have it just known. So they can just fly around without even having to chirp, because they know the path already there. And subhanAllah, again, when reflecting on that, is just how magnificent is the one who created that. That in and of itself is amazing. That was super cool to us. Wow, these bats have this ability to be able to do that, right? And memorize it and just fly around without hitting anything in the pitch black darkness, right? That in and of itself, subhanAllah, that's amazing. How amazing is the one that gave that ability to that bat? So reflecting back on the majesty and the magnificence of God Himself, Allah that created this creature to be perfectly suited for that environment, and to be so cool, honestly, to be so cool that for us, as we learn these things in science and things like that, that really we should be, yes, we marvel at it, but we should also marvel at the one that created that. And by so doing and gaining an appreciation for Allah Himself, then it becomes easier for us to worship Allah, to thank Allah, to ask Allah for things, right? Because we realize how great, how vast, how powerful, how knowledgeable Allah is, right? So now as we're going through this fast and suppressing our hunger, for what? For that Creator, right? That does these magnificent things for us to learn about and appreciate. And so many, of those miracles just within our own bodies, our immune system during this COVID time and all this kind of stuff. We need to marvel at these things and then marvel at the Creator and Sustainer of all of us. The third kind of reflection that we had was the grave. So again, as we're in these caves and in these tight spaces and having to squeeze through, and that little bit of claustrophobia and that you experience, and again it's dark at certain times, and some parts of it are vast and comfortable, and other parts are tight and sharp, like the stalagmites and stalactites can be sharp at certain points and stuff. You can scratch yourself and things like that. So really reflecting on our life. How are we living our life so that our time in the grave can be expansive and comfortable, and a taste of Jannah for us, a taste of paradise for us, as opposed to being tight and constricted and painful and uncomfortable if we live our life in this world in a way that's negative. And that's one of the things for us, as we're going through a lot of these difficulties and challenges, like with shutdown and disease and death and all these type of things, is to realize death comes to all of us, one way or another. It could be from a natural death, it could be from a disease, it could be that just walking outside, we get hit by a car, Allah forbid that happens. Death is going to come. What's more important is, what have we done to prepare for the death? It doesn't matter how we die. It could be from an oppressor, it could be from a war, it could be from anything. Again, we're going to die. What did we do to prepare for that death, which is inevitable, right? So just thinking about death, thinking about the grave, and how uncomfortable was in this life being in that situation. And imagine being in your grave waiting for the day of judgment for all those years, eons and eras that would pass by. You know, making sure that we live righteously now so that, again, our experience in the grave will be easy and beautiful for us, and actually pleasing as opposed to the other way. Two more quick things. One was reflecting on Surah Al-Kahf and the story of the youth of the cave. So talking about caves specifically here, and how, you know, Allah inspired these youth, and these were youth who were calling to the truth. They were believers in God, one God, right? Not believing in multiple gods or idols, or, you know, worshiping anything other except, you know, Allah alone. And they were inspired to seek refuge in a cave. So sometimes we think of caves as being scary places, but caves also are a place of refuge, right? So these youth, again, they secluded themselves, you know, in order to protect themselves, to safeguard themselves. So for us, being in this seclusion, you know, this seclusion is for the sake of protection, right? So we're not, you know, caught up or locked in. We're, you know, in a situation of safety. So this is a blessing. Not everybody's household is a safe place. Some people don't even have homes, and they're just out there in the middle of this situation, right? They have no escape. They have no refuge. So the fact that we have homes that we can be safe in, we should see as a blessing. And our homes are also a safe place for us to worship, which is what they were trying to do. They were seeking refuge so that they can remain believers and not have to succumb to the pressure of not being able to practice. So our homes also should be places of refuge for us to grow spiritually, and to grow in our worship and to grow in our faith, not places that push us away from that. So that's the kind of household that we should be trying to build as well, is that it should be a place that brings us closer to God. And then finally, the fifth thing, when talking about caves, is the Prophet ﷺ himself, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself, and going to the cave of Hira before he received revelation. And this was just his practice, that he would go to the cave as a place of reflection. So for us, utilizing this time that we are in our caves, our home caves, our man caves, or, you know, woman caves in our homes, utilizing this time of seclusion for reflection as well. He was reflecting on spirituality, focused, you know, reflecting on purpose, reflecting on the condition of his people, reflecting on, you know, the good and the bad and the ills of his society, right? And you know, again, just trying to figure things out. And so this time of seclusion afforded him the opportunity when, you know, he was able to leave his job of being a businessman or a trader or being a shepherd or whatever the different things that he was doing in his life. He took time out to be able to reflect on himself personally, on his family, on his society. How can he improve himself, his family, his society, thinking about God and all those different things, taking the opportunity to seclude themselves. And most of us, especially in this society, we're in this dog-eat-dog situation where we're constantly busy to grind every single day. Allah has actually given us the opportunity to sit back, whether we like it or not. This, you know, He placed us in an environment to reflect. But we have to take advantage of this opportunity to use this time in an effective way. So we have this time now that we're in seclusion by force. And now it's also Ramadan, which should be a time of reflection anyway, where we kind of change our habits to be able to do that. So now we have a double bonus. We have Ramadan during seclusion, you know, then we have a double opportunity for us to try to do more of that reflection, more of that worship. You know, instead of going to the masjid and praying, you know, our voluntary prayers, we're actually now are forced to pray those voluntary prayers at home, which is actually the sunnah, is to pray your voluntary prayers at home where you get more good deeds for doing them at home, right? And so we can afford ourselves that opportunity. So do we leave off, you know, praying at night, qiyamul layl, tahajjud, you know, the tarawih that we usually would do in Ramadan at the masjid? Will we leave that off completely now that we're home? Or actually, do we do it at home and get actually more of the rewards, because that's what we should have been doing anyway? Right? Because this is where we get more of the good deeds, and doing them in the last third of the night instead of exactly right after Isha prayer and things like that. So, you know, always looking at the positives of the situation, utilizing our caves now, reflecting on all these different things, of the light of guidance, of the amazing things that Allah has created at death and the graves, reflecting on, using our homes as a refuge and using our homes as a place of reflection during this time, inshallah. So we ask Allah to allow us to be able to utilize this time in an effective way, and especially now during the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah to accept our fasts and our prayers and our reflections. Ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك